just so everybody knows. Okay, I wanted to take a moment here to speak to and riff on the imitation and when that serves and when that doesn't serve. And in order to speak to this, I want to use the language, I want to use specific language, and I'd like to use the word emulate or emulating to define the type of imitation that serves us, and mimicking as the type of imitation that does not. And I'll go into a little bit more about why here as I go, but just to establish those terms to begin with. So, all right, so as human beings, we have the capacity to learn via our environment and via those around us. I mean, that seems obvious, right? It's like, how else would we learn? But yet as adults, it's like we almost forget, that that is actually the most potent learning power that a human being has, right? Through school, I feel that we are conditioned to start absorbing, we're conditioned to start learning via a process of acquiring information about a thing. And it's like it has to go, it all goes through the brain. We kind of cognitively need to comprehend something, and then we need to implement it in our behavior from there as a sort of step two. And that's how a lot of our schooling is set up in our world, period, perhaps especially in kind of North America, European culture. There's a real mega value on, I'm sure not only, I think a lot of Asia is this way as well, a real emphasis on intellect, the intellect being the tool for learning. Now, learning happens in a lot of other ways as well, and some ways that are perhaps faster. So, as a dancer, I've had a really interesting and quite a bit of exposure to this, because as a dancer, when you go through your training, very little of your learning is intellectual. You do some intellectual learning, but it's not, certainly in a conservatory style training program, which was what I did. Your learning is really embodied, and it's really practical, and it's really experiential. Now there's some situations where it's not that, but that's fine. We won't focus on that today. So kind of generally as a culture, I believe that we undervalue the type of learning that can happen, not necessarily without the intellect. The intellect gets to come on the ride. The intellect gets to articulate the experience. And at times, the intellect gets to open the door into the new experience that might be available, but I don't believe that that's how the intellect best serves. Anyways, to make a long story short, my point is that we can learn a lot and experience a lot of value in emulating other human beings in our environment who are holding qualities that we are not yet holding to the degree that we desire. So there's a beautiful example from my own life that I'll share. So for those of you watching this on Kala TV, you'll know who I'm talking about. People will seeing this maybe on my personal page or whatever, you may not. So I will give a bit more context. So the other day I was in a call with a client, and feeling like I needed to hold tighter boundaries with her. That's not quite sufficient. I needed to hold give her less room to go into storylines that were other than her being a fully empowered human being. Now, that is not my that has not been my strength in the past. As somebody who is quite empathetic, I mean, I think most human beings are empathetic, but I have a type of empathy where my discernment necessarily between what another is sensing and I'm sensing is building that discernment is under development. I've come a long way, but in the past that has not been a strong skill, in which case then it's very easy for me to fall into another individual's storyline. So in this particular context, I was needing to hold firmer to a place of knowing of her full potent power and capacity, and to not be fooled or drawn into her narratives about whatever. So the person in my world currently, who I have the good fortune to have quite a bit of contact with, is Lainey Smith, who is really strong at holding truth, at holding the greater truth of a human being infinitely powerful creature, in the face of dissenting views and opinions. So I get to use my sense of her and draw on that to deepen that sense within me. So that is very cool just to begin with. Now, in the context of this call, I was in a place of, am I feeling like, is this healthy? I was in a place of wondering, is this healthy? Am I feeling like there's kind of a right way to do it? And the right way to do it is like Lainey. So the very fact that I'm asking that question in that context in the moment means I'm realizing now after the fact, because if I can have curiosity around a thing, well, it might not mean the pattern is totally gone, but it means there's enough space from it that at least I can see it. So many dots here. Let's see if I can reconnect to the main line here. Yeah, so bringing up the question, but if we feel that we do need to be like someone, that's when we can fall into mimicking, which ironically ends up being a less deep integration of that particular skill or quality. We end up kind of putting on this shallow form veneer kind of interpretation of how we feel we should be, instead of feeling for the actual useful elements of that behavior and then translating them into who we are and how we are, so that they can become a more integrated aspect of who we are. I wouldn't even say it that way, so that we can uncover that capacity that is already accessible to us, but perhaps we've kind of closed the door and not understood that. So it's for me to kind of not so much be like Lainey, it's for me to feel into how does she hold that line, and what is the way that Ruth, hold that line within myself. And yet it is a very useful thing to have somebody in our environment who's really holding that energy. And then our minds, bodies, imaginations have a huge capacity to draw that in and actually embody it. So as a dancer in a really sophisticated dance practice, that's actually what we're doing. We are learning to feel within our system what that quality or texture is, and we're using other beings and or qualities or textures, right? The beauty of abstract dance is that it doesn't have to be human, to draw on that texture as to increase our range so that we too can show up with that quality and or texture. So it was a really beautiful moment for me to be like, okay, this is very useful. It's useful for me to recollect Lainey and her firmness when I'm in that dialogue. Now, other things that are great to keep in mind here are further factors that we can use to discern whether we are in a useful form of imitation or not, in whether we are emulating or perhaps falling into kind of mimicking or pretend is maybe even. I mean, even pretending can be something that we do that comes to integrate the skill fully within ourselves. But it's for us to know when we're embodying the thing in a shallow way versus completely, not to make ourselves wrong for that to any degree. But if we can know that, then we're good. Then we're not going to get stuck in pretending. So, and for those of you who know the archetypes, right, the child, when we're in child, we fall into pretending. We kind of put on the clothing of that thing, but we aren't truly feeling it within ourselves. So that might be, instead of me fully seeking to integrate the firmness that Lainey can hold, it might be me using some of her language or even some of her tones that that are really surface representations of her true alignment with truth and her unwillingness to tolerate deviations from that, that's fundamentally the skill I want to really hone within myself. So some of the things that can help us differentiate between what we're doing and when is our relationship to that skill that we're seeking to grow. So can I be present to the process within myself of exploring this skill with curiosity, with genuine curiosity, so that, and curiosity is kind of what opens and creates the space for my like senses to pick up on, is this true and authentic? Is this not true and authentic? Where is there, where does Ruth maybe get afraid of that degree of firmness, and why? Where does fear come up? But if I can hold that curiosity in the space as I explore bringing in that skill, that is, that we can know if curiosity is genuinely present, and not, we can fake curiosity too. And that also doesn't serve, right? We can be in a space of, yeah, I'm curious, and not actually be genuinely looking, which only happens when we're kind of feeling a little bit lazy or a little bit like something is at stake if we were to actually see something, which is only going to happen if we feel like there's a possibility that we can be wrong or doing the wrong thing, or bad, fundamentally bad for doing the wrong thing. Okay. There was another point I wanted to make about how we can discern. Well, I think we each get to develop the capacity, because it isn't about putting on or being that person. Oh yeah. And there, insofar as there is a sense of I'm doing it right or I'm doing it wrong, we're also, that is what is going to create stakes, right? If I can do it wrong, there was a small part of me on that call that felt like, if I'm too loose with her, I'm doing it wrong and I'm not going to kind of pass the test. Now, the very fact that I could draw that into awareness and articulate it after the fact means it's not such a huge issue, but still good for me to name for sure. Yeah, so we want to be able, I lost my train of thought. Let's see if I can find it again here. We want to be able to, yes, discern between that kind of pasting on overlay versus fully embodying the texture and tone from within ourselves. So it also isn't in any way about it being identical, especially not identical on the outside. it isn't about what the outside looks like or even or the words that are said. It's going to be about the energetic tone of with which the words are said or the energy is held. Okay, so I think that's mostly it. Just going to see here if there's anything else on this angle lens of emulating versus mimicking. Yeah, and then I think I'd invite anybody and everybody watching this to feel into what are some of the qualities that you feel are on the table for you to enhance, that you desire to enhance within your own being, and to seek out contact with individuals who you feel hold that energy, if you don't already have contact with them, and then to let your imagination kind of absorb that and carry that into your interactions. And it's going to feel a little bit certainly new. It may even feel kind of inauthentic. So that's also where we, even if we are kind of mimicking or falling into the shallow representations, remember that that doesn't have to be a bad thing. That's just the beginning. So, okay, I've got this outer concept of how this thing is, and I'm playing with that. Then we get to look deeper at what my understanding of it right now is perhaps a sort of shallow concept. And how do I take that deeper? And I take that deeper through genuine curiosity and then experimentation. So yeah, okay, I think I'll leave that here. Hope and trust this serves people. And yeah, I'd love to hear how people are, what qualities you're desiring to emulate and how you are doing that and how you're developing your own lens of discernment about when you're doing that in ways that serve you and ways that may not be. Okay, that's it for now. Bye.